Alright, I have the haptic gear at the highest setting. And you're gonna shoot me with a tank to test it out.
Right,
Shoot me! Try to make sure you hit me dead center in the chest here, okay?
Right.
Oh! Oh! Hello and welcome back to my channel for another review, and this is a 2-for-1 special here. You can probably see that I'm wearing something a little bit extra right now, and that's because they are the subject for today's review. And this is for covering a Bhaptics Vest and armbands. See, VR enthusiasts crave extra immersion in many, many ways. And these things promise give the ability to give you haptic feedback based on what happens in the game. On the vest, you have 40 total points, 20 in the front and 20 in the back. And then the arms, you got 6 each per limb. So that's a total of 12 together. And they promise that you'll actually be able to feel many sensations that, well, you previously couldn't. Like, do you want to feel the kick of a gunshot run through your arm and shoulder? This'll do that. Or how about actually getting shot? Alright, hit me! Ow! Well, you can check off that masochistic urge too. I'm not one to judge. But are these good? Well, that is what we are going to take a look at today. To give a brief overview before we dive in, the Bhaptics gear works via a series of motors that spreads across the device, and they will vibrate in varying intensity based upon what happens to you in-game, and it has been programmed in. Like, say I get shot here on my in-game body in Pavlov. The motor in my vest in this location is going to start buzzing at that exact spot to stimulate the feeling of being shot. And that's the most basic idea of how Bhaptics works. So, as you are here to see if these are worth it and not just my wonderful voice, let's get started and look at the Bhaptics Vest first.
As stated, the Bhaptics Vest has 40 haptic points, 20 on the front and back each. I should also mention that I have the DK3 and not the X40 version. However, they are functionally near identical, and near everything I say applies to the X40. The only real difference is that the battery life is slightly lower on the DK3, but it's still like 12 hours or longer, so who cares? Oh, and it lacks a 3.5mm audio jack, but for VR use, it's basically an X40, but with a little different fit. Given all the haptic points, this gives the vest some pretty precise feedback with respect to location. If you direct your attention to the bottom right corner of the screen, you can see a live feedback showing when a motor activates. In FPS games, this is actually quite nice and can sometimes be a legitimate tactical advantage with the directional feedback. Though, don't expect it to be game-changing, because if somebody gets a drop on you and you need to rely on the vest feedback, chances are you're dead anyway. But the vest can do so much more than just simulate getting hit, and some people have gotten quite creative, making for some immersive feedback that helps you get engaged into the game. In Half-Life Alyx, for example, you get a sensation down your back when putting away things behind your shoulder, which gives a feeling akin to dropping something in your backpack that you got on. Or your heart starts beating intensely when you're on low health, which really starts to make you feel the adrenaline of being so close to death. Or even when you use a health station and sort of get a buzzing across the entire vest that simulates the restoration traveling through your whole body. Really, Alyx has one of the best implementations of Bhaptics across any game I have played, despite the fact it's a mod. But I'll come back to implementation when I discuss title compatibility later, as trust me, not all games with Bhaptics are created equal. Despite how much I do like the feedback that the vest provides in some games, I have to comment that it did feel kinda weak at the stock 100%. But thankfully, if you feel this way, the Bhaptics software lets you adjust the intensity all the way up to 400%. I don't even run this at 200%. But anyway, point is, there are options. The software is pretty basic, not hard to use. You just pair, adjust the intensity, and you have a function to test the motors. But there's also a way to show what you're feeling on the vest in real time if you're a content creator, like, you know, in the videos right now. On comfort, I'm only going to briefly touch on this since this is a place where the X40 and DK3 do actually differ a bit. But in general, you are going to start getting a bit hot wearing this vest. It's nearly 4 pounds, and it's a bit bulky with covering most of your torso. You're probably gonna start sweating in this thing. And Thankfully, it includes a washable mesh inner lining that you can use to deal with this problem. I've heard some people also say that can feel a little restrictive on the movement since it covers most of your torso. Honestly, I don't really feel it. This thing does not feel restrictive at all for my play. However, if you are somebody who likes to crouch a lot, then yeah, I could perhaps see some issues arising when it comes to comfort there. The other thing is finding a balance between tight enough to be comfortable, but also feel the haptics, since if the vest is too loose, you won't feel the motors well. This shouldn't take you more than a session or two to figure out though, and really, once you get it, you can just set it and forget it. In general though, the vest is quite nice, and if you can only pick one piece of Bhaptics gear, you'll want it to be the vest. It has the most feedback points and versatility of all the gear, and I like it. But with the vest overview done, we now move on to the arms. And I am a lot more mixed about these. So let's start with the positives first. Even though these only have 6 points on each arm, the sensations are actually rather nice on it. These are mainly designed for things like, say, gun recoil, melee impacts, or sometimes spells. The best aspect of these is easily the melee though. Like, it's actually pretty nice for there to be a sense of blocking another weapon and feeling the impact travel through your arms between the controllers and bands. To get some of the feedback when your weapon digs into another foe, those things are just great. Because as much as I do love melee combat in VR, it's so hard to do, right? Because of the very nature of just holding controllers and the lack of actual feedback. The arms help change this aspect, and their effect on melee combat is easily the highlight. Blade and Sorcery definitely feels lacking when I try to play it without these after having experienced it. Gunshots too though, especially if you have a gun stock like I do. Especially then. It is so incredibly immersive to actually be holding an object like a real gun and feel some kind of feedback through my arm. However, the armbands have problems. Firstly, getting them on is honestly a real pain to do. You have to find the right spot on your arm and tightness, because if you make it too tight, it's physically painful and digs into the bone. But if it's too loose, well, you have the thing come loose. And this is a problem that, because when you rotate your arm, you'll notice that like the bone in it and stuff will move, but the armband doesn't quite move with it. And I've had several major problems with its thing falling off. So many times. It happens at least once, sometimes even twice, a session when I'm playing in melee combat in particular, when it's a longer session that is. And damn, does it suck to have to pause everything and fix up your wrist and find that sweet spot again. I've tried it all over my arm in every position people recommended, from almost on the wrists, near the elbow, and somewhere in between. But none of them have worked. It is not a constant issue, yes, but it is happening enough that in melee combat with it, I find myself actually kind of checking myself on swings for fear that I'm gonna have the wrist come loose. And that's ended up sometimes making me less immersed in the game with having to always keep that in mind. This is, admittedly, less of an issue when it comes to gun-focused games, but now and again I've still had them vibrate so much as to come loose during longer play sessions. Adding on to this all though, trying to reach behind my back and over the shoulders sometimes does feel restricting and limited because the bands are bulky enough that they'll often press into my arm. It's not a severe problem, but again, it's enough to take me out of the game sometimes. In general, the comfort and ease of use of these feels, frankly, pretty bad when compared to the vest. The vest is insanely quick and easy to put on, and you never have to worry about coming loose. Takes me all of 10 seconds to take it off from the hanger and put it on when I want to play. And despite the fact of how well these work for what they do, they are still highly limited versus the vest. Kind of, honestly, not a big fan of the armbands because of all this. And speaking of limitations, this is a perfect point to talk about game implementation and compatibility. See, you cannot just use these in any games you want. The game has to either natively support it or have been modded to. And to be Bhaptics' credit, and the modders, the library is honestly quite huge by now. At the time of this writing, there are over 200 titles which support Bhaptics gear, 136 natively with 71 modded. You can even use this in Quest 2 in native standalone mode. No PC required, and there are 86 games with support for it there. That's quite a library. These are also not just a bunch of shovelware games made to pad out the numbers either, though there definitely are a couple on there. Most of VR's large games do have support for this, modded or otherwise. Heck, I got like 15 games in my library which support it, and several of them are my most played VR games. Chances are that most people will have at least several titles on this list that are supported, but despite that, and having several big games, there are still things in my library that I play a lot which just unfortunately don't support it, like say Project Wingman or the Resident Evil VR mods. But just because there is support, that doesn't always mean it's gonna be perfect. At the top end, you have things like Alex, which I did talk about earlier, where there are like a million sensations to really enhance the feel and presence of the game. And because they're mods, you can even customize the intensity of various things to your liking. But on the other end, there are some lacking implementations, like say Pavlov, to my great disappointment. In general, Pavlov support is actually pretty nice, but there is one very fatal flaw in its Bhaptics integrations with the armbands, and that really takes me out of the experience. Notice what I'm doing in the shooting range right now. I am using a two-handed weapon, yet only my right hand is lighting up on the haptic points. My left arm, it's just completely dormant, and not giving me any kind of feedback at all. Might as well be totally numb. This is despite the fact it obviously should be, you know? Furthermore, if you are somebody who mainly plays Pavlov for things like, say, the Call of Duty zombie maps, then you get 0 haptic feedback points from being hit by the zombies. And so the gear just feels wasted in that case. I mean, between the fact that you're only getting some haptics in your shoulder and one hand when shooting. And because this is native support, you cannot adjust any of the values or fix it yourself. You are stuck with this implementation. Or look at Legendary Tales, where I get 0 haptic feedback from blocking and swinging. Furthermore, in the case of something like, say, VR chat, well, you can't just throw on whatever avatar you want and use it. The avatar must be manually made to support it, which means finding a public avatar which supports it, and if you want anything decent looking, good luck with that! Or alternatively, you must possess the avatar's Unity package files to add on the Bhaptic support before uploading it to your account yourself.
So, that all said, even when you get a good implementation though, are the haptics that great and worth it? I mean, at the end of the day, it's still just a bunch of vibrating motors, right? Well, yes, the haptic sensations it provides are definitely a lot more limited, especially when you look at some of the upcoming options, like, say, the KoToR Vest, I hope I'm saying that right, or the Skinetic, which definitely are a lot more advanced looking, but a little more on those later. However, when you're actually in-game, letting yourself get immersed and be part of the world, it actually doesn't just feel like some rumbling motors. It doesn't feel one-to-one like being shot, sure, but what kind of person actually wants to feel like they're getting shot by a machine gun while having fun? Me. I would. I am that kind of person. Anyway, when you are fully immersed into the game, your mind kind of fills in some of the blanks and the gaps in your perceptions. Like, take when I am shooting a gun. Despite the fact that I only have the haptic points on my controller, and then the vest, and one localized point on my arm in some games like Pavlov, it feels kind of more than that. And the intensity is enough to be enjoyable and fun while adding to the immersion, but not be legitimately painful and take you out of it so that you don't want to continue playing and yank the thing off. There is plenty of room to improve, and I would be lying if I said it was perfect and I don't want more. But I still like it. On the plus side, the fact that they are motors means you can open up the software, go to the test section, and activate all the motors on the best, turn any chair into a massage one. Oh yeah, that feels nice and relaxing. Who needs to spend $1,000 on a massage chair stuck in one spot when you got this, right? Catch me in a few minutes. I'm gonna just enjoy this for now. Anyway, that was nice. This brings us to the value proposition and the question of if it's worth it in 2023, or if you should wait for a competitor, because, like I said, we do have a couple on the horizon. The two that I do know of are the Vest and Skinetic. And like I said, yeah, they look a lot more advanced. Uses electrostimulation to do some really crazy things. There is a lot you can do with that. While Skinetic, from what I can see, has some much more advanced looking motors that claim to be able to replicate a far more diverse array of sensations. The is around Bhaptics tier pricing, while Skinetic is unknown for the consumer, not the dev kit version, which is a lot more expensive apparently. They said it's going to be cheaper, but I don't know by how much. But there is one major problem any competitor to Bhaptics is going to need to overcome. No matter how good the tech in them is, the problem is game library and support. Because, see, Bhaptics has clawed their way to having a gigantic library of supported titles and spent years building it up natively, or because of some very dedicated and hardworking modders. And you could say that the trail was blazed by them. So others will probably have an easier time, and that's fair, that might be true. But it doesn't matter how advanced the hardware is if nothing supports it. I could have a damn Tesla suit. That costs more than my PC. And I'd still use the Bhaptics over it simply because there is literally nothing, except VR chat because of one absolute madman modder, that supports it. The Tesla suit would be a fancy paperweight for my needs. And that thing is on a whole different plane of existence versus the Bhaptics technology. And looking at the competitors, the game library support for these is not good. It is really not good. You got the here with less than 10 games, and I can't even find a list of what Skinetic supports on their website. So I don't even know if their Kickstarter list from a long while back is valid or not, considering that fell through. Because of that, and the fact these aren't out yet, I think it is hard to make a fair comparison or even recommendation, especially as I haven't tried them. But if you are interested in Bhaptics, I may at least keep an eye on these two to see where they go if you are on the fence about buying this. However, setting those aside, because who knows if they're going to come out soon, or maybe they're going to come out like in a year, is the Bhaptics Vest worth it now? Well, value context first on the pricing. Not counting tax or shipping, which is a fair bit, on the Bhaptics Vest, the X40 is $499. Meanwhile, the armbands are $249. At those prices, I don't know. I think the vest is debatably worth it at that price if you play a lot of supported games and are a big VR enthusiast, assuming the other two don't launch for a while or their library sucks. But, on the other hand, the arms. If I paid $250 for these, I would be extremely disappointed in the arms. Hell, I got both of these, vest plus arms, for only $300 on the secondhand market, and I am still kind of disappointed by these. And I have a very high tolerance for low comfort in VR, but these are just a step too much for me, and I think that I'm probably going to end up selling these off. If they were less of a hassle to use or less prone to sliding around, I'd probably keep them, honestly. And no, this is not just because of my get up here and they're hard to get on with that. I have had these issues happen even when I have been off camera, so it's just a recurring problem, unfortunately. And I could not really recommend the arms like I could with the vest, unfortunately. I love the vest, though. For that price, oh, holy hell, was that worth it? This thing is great. I do think the VR enthusiast can definitely get some fun out of this gear. Absolutely, I have. But if you are on the fence, it may be worth watching the competition to see what is in store. I'd love to be able to try the gear myself sometime and give a comparison though. Maybe I'll get that chance. And those are my thoughts on the Bhaptics Vest and Arms. If you enjoyed the review or think I missed anything, let me know in the comments and stick around if you'd like to see more in the future. I have some very special content planned about another headset that should soon, hopefully, be here within the next month or so. So stick around if you want to see some of that. And if not, well, thanks for stopping by, and maybe I'll pop up again sometime. Later.